Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
My name is Eric. I'm here with Michael on Double Feature.
Hi.
And I'm sick today, so I want to watch another fucking John Waters movie.
Sounds like a plan.
How does this keep happening?
I have no idea.
So today we're doing the May and Teeth show, but with older women, right? That's kind of
That's exactly what it is, yeah.
It's, what are the movies?
Today we're going to do To Die For and Serial Mom.
This is one of those double features that I don't know how much I have to say about it, but it's just too fucking perfect of a pairing. I mean, these are mid-90s dark comedy films about women committing so-called true crimes. It's just so good. We had to do it. So hopefully people watched it at home on their own, and then they got probably more enjoyment than they're going to get out of this episode. We'll do To Die For first, because the whole doing John Waters first thing, that doesn't feel good.
No,
we'll
it's
do
always
second.
weird.
We'll do To Die For first. That's the Gus Van Sant film. Obviously, after that, we'll do Serial Mom, which is the John Waters film. And we got chapters.
Sure, chapters.
So if you happen to not catch one of those movies, what would you do?
You could go ahead and skip right over in your chapters menu.
Perfect.
To the next film or the end of the show where we tell you that we're doing...
Oh, man, we got a huge one. Don't spoil it. Not yet. You have to wait for it. We've been trying to do this movie on the show for a long time. We found something else that we said, fuck it, we're going to pair it with this movie. Right. I would almost just skip there now and find out. But don't do that. Listen to the...
don't spoil it for yourself.
Let's do To Die For first.
Okay.
This one is based on the so-called true story. I'm going to keep saying so-called true story because I think that's perfect. Of Pamela Smart. And this is actually something of a true story. There was a book called To Die For that was written, and then this is the movie kind of based on that. And I think this is interesting as a Gus Van Sant movie because I don't know. It feels... Does it feel like Gus Van Sant? Is it halfway there?
Yeah,
what
I think
is it?
I think that as a Gus Van Sant film, I haven't seen
Elephant, right? That was what we did on the show.
Right, we did Elephant.
There's your previously on double feature thing to kind of compare that to.
I haven't seen nearly as many as you, but from what I know is that Gus Van Sant has his films, and then he has the films that Matt Damon are in.
Right. Although I wouldn't say that's necessarily true, because some of his artsy stuff has Matt Damon
That's
too.
true. But I would definitely say that as far as mainstream goes, this falls just about middle of the road.
Yeah,
there's
right.
enough Gus Van Sant artsy bullshit, which take or leave, and then there's enough mainstreamy bullshit,
which also take or leave. So, you know, the closest you probably get to this sort of mixture is the film Milk, which is capitalizing on a lot of the artsy Gus Van Sant stuff, but somehow had enough appeal. I shouldn't say somehow. It had enough appeal because they pumped budget into it.
And it was, 2.5 hours long?
And lots of people were interested in the story. And it's a good movie. Not to knock any of that stuff, but just to look at where these fall. Because Gus Van Sant's always been one of the most distinct examples of, I have my artsy films, I have my mainstream films. Elephant was what you would consider...
art film.
Of course. And so Finding Forrester would be...
painfully mainstream.
What was the other one that was super mainstream too?
Good Will Hunting?
Good Will Hunting. It's odd when you go back and when you watch all of a director's movies from a director you've never seen any of their stuff, and then to try and figure out which were the mainstream ones, you can identify them. They're really easy with Gus Van Sant. However, they're not the ones that I remember.
Right.
And so the ones that might be your favorite as you perform this experiment at home, not always the ones that were a huge, phenomenal success.
Right.
So it's curious to look at what made those big successes. And a lot of times that's budget and content and, you know, stuff like Milk.
Cast and...
the studio decided it would be a huge breakout success. It had more advertising, it won some awards, you know, whatever the case may be. We're certainly better at looking at cult films and figuring out how those accidentally became successes.
Right.
We should pick a mainstream film sometime and just really look into what the fuck, how did, say, a Gus Van Sant mainstream film become a Gus Van Sant mainstream film? But we have some weird middle ground with To Die For. what do you feel like are the mainstream elements? What are the artsy elements here?
Well, I think that a lot of the mainstream element comes from casting. Then again, this is early Joaquin Phoenix and early Casey Affleck, so we can't chalk them up to big names in casting just yet. But we do have Nicole Kidman.
Sure.
And we do have Matt Dillon, who at the time was actually popular. If you don't know who Matt Dillon is, he is the husband in the film To Die For.
Oh, great.
Yeah, he was an actor back in like 1994.
I've already forgotten who that is. Again, which one?
The husband, Matt Dillon.
In the film we watched.
To Die For is the name of the film.
What was the actor's name?
I don't remember.
Fuck.
So the casting is definitely a huge factor on what makes this a mainstreamy Gus Van Sant film.
Right.
Also the fact that there's a really cohesive, straightforward narrative.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that that narrative gets interrupted by kind of testimonials
right.
is really... That's the artsy element, and the fact that you don't ever really get the full story until the story is finished is another really artsy element to the film.
Yeah, it's really strange, the documentary aspects of the film. And I mean, you know, for me, I can look back at a lot of the stuff Gus Van Sant has done and kind of pick out, I mean, we mentioned before on the show, the Death trilogy,
Mm-hmm.
You know, stuff like Elephant, which we did, but also Last Days and Jerry. And I can see Gus Van Sant's interest, and this would really be, you know, a budding interest at the time because he hadn't done any of that stuff yet. So this was his first real kind of, I guess there's crime elements to some of the stuff he does. But I feel like this is based on the novel, which is based on the court proceedings, which are, you know, an explanation of these killings. I mean, this is true fucking crime that we're talking about. And so I see the Gus Van Sant there. I definitely see it there. But then you have some other weird elements kind of thrown in the mix.
Right.
The most awesome of which is the ass-kicking Danny Elfman score.
Yeah.
Holy shit, where did this thing come from? So put me kind of in the era of what are we dealing? We're dealing with like 95. So whereabouts is that?
This is just about after the Elfman-Burton divorce.
Okay, so we're right in that kind of territory.
Yeah. So Danny Elfman has kind of been scoring Tim Burton films, and I mean, he's garnered enough mainstream success separate from Tim Burton that he's been doing other films.
Right.
When we did Ed Wood, we kind of talked about how Danny Elfman was notably absent from the score.
Right.
And this is what he was doing. Imagine Ed Wood with this soundtrack, and now you know why.
Yeah,
Ed Wood did not have Danny Elfman's score.
And so we're dealing with maybe Edward Scissorhands era, but we have this grinding guitar, these metal pieces, and this musical saw, which I really don't... Sort of Mars Attacks kind of musical saw that's in there, especially the opening credits. Yeah. Just so good.
Well, it's almost reminiscent of Funny Games.
Yeah, right.
Where it's quiet and quaint and we're in fucking Connecticut and then, oh my God, rock and roll. Everything's so fucking loud for no reason.
Punk fucking rock, man. Resistance, fuck the man, your own path, anarchy,
denim jackets.
Forward, yeah, right. And the music isn't punk rock so much as the kids that are on display during the music. But God, just, man, to hear that grinding guitar Elfman stuff, I want that back. I want to hear more of that.
Well, I don't know if I've ever heard anything like it other than this film.
Yeah, I guess this is
I mean,
probably...
his band in the 80s, Oingo Boingo, had plenty of rock and roll guitar, but not like film score style.
I don't know about the stuff like this, although you've heard more of the Oingo Boingo. I mean, have you heard something like this in Oingo Boingo?
Not
or is
so
it
much.
It just has guitar, and that makes it...
I mean, there's elements, but nothing like that.
Does it have musical saw, though, is really the...
No, not so much.
Without the Danny Elfman, this would be a completely different film.
Yeah. And
I think so much of a less interesting film. You know, it seems fun and innocent, and then, the score just gives this total change. It's kind of like, that scene that has Sweet Home Alabama in it.
Yeah.
And she's dancing, and it's just fun outside, and you look inside again, and then it's a little creepy, but it's still Sweet Home Alabama. And then the score slowly changes. It comes in over the music. It's what the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
And it's dark and creepy.
Yeah.
Suddenly that scene, this woman in headlights, is dangerous and awful and disturbing when just 2 seconds ago Sweet Home Alabama was playing.
Right.
And so there's that tonal shift that happens within the movie, but I think the whole movie would feel weird and airy and just sort of... blank without that score.
It's a fascinating juxtapose against most of Gus Van Sant stuff because Gus Van Sant's films are so
weird and airy and empty.
Well, and firmly grounded in realism.
Yeah.
Everything that goes on in a Gus Van Sant film goes on in real life.
That's mostly the point of his films.
But Danny Elfman is
Except
not
the one
known...
with Uma Thurman and the really big thumbs. Sorry, go on.
But Danny Elfman is not known for his realism. He's known for his kind of abstractness and his surrealistic portraits of what's going... That's why he works with Tim Burton so well, is because they have this surrealistic vision of what's going on. And when you juxtapose firm realism with surrealistic score, you get whatever the fuck goes on in To Die For, where Nicole Kidman seems kind of like a cartoon character that you're scared to death of.
Yeah, right? Yeah, she has the both of those elements. She has the cartoonness that makes her a believable person.
Right.
But that also somehow makes her more real. And the real part of her scares the fucking crap out of you.
She's able to pair between being a cute cartoon and someone you would fuck.
Now we're talking about Jessica Rabbit, which we're not going to hit till the next movie.
Sorry, I get that confused.
But let's play the game, though. Let's just imagine this movie without the Elfman score. Right, because we have the documentary kind of sections, the testimonial sort of one-off sections. I mean, this would become one of these films that the type of mockumentary, faux documentary movies that exist in so great numbers in recent years, and are so. I mean, this doesn't even feel like one of those.
Right.
The first time you start to get those scenes, maybe you think about it, but by the end, you would not compare this to a fake documentary.
Not at all.
That, maybe one we've talked about on the show, or the vast number that have been copied and created in various different genres for all sorts of reasons in recent years around the popularization of The Office.
Sure.
After the Ricky Gervais series, and then once it came to America and 150 other countries, and you start to see fake documentaries all over the place. This isn't one of those, even though without the score, I mean, it kind of would be one of those.
Yeah,
wouldn't
it absolutely would be.
So Nicole Kidman of Fur and of, what was the other? There was John Waters with Fur, and then there was Eyes Wide Shut that we saw her in on the show. Nicole Kidman gets a little darker. We start to see the cartoony version of her a little differently, but I think the movie has a tonal shift. And I mentioned that Sweet Home Alabama moment, but is that a turning point in the film, or do you think it's more gradual? I guess first, do you feel like it gets darker toward the end?
I feel like there's a clear point. I think it's about the point where Matt Dillon, who plays the husband in the film, he's an actor from the early 90s.
Matt Dillon.
When he talks to her about the thing that I was telling you drives me crazy, where he tries to include her cute little hobby in his actual real life plan.
Stupid life plan, too.
Exactly. And he walks out the door and says he wants no one other than his best girl alongside him. Right. That's when you realize she's going to have him killed. Because you realize that he has now belittled her huge ideals into a tiny little pigeonhole that he's just going to have her, you could make videos of karaoke and sell it to other people.
So that's the moment where she doesn't understand him. That's kind of where her motivations start. I mean, there's definitely an area in the film. You have, who is it? Ileana Douglas?
Right. His
Dummy,
sister.
right? We saw her back in Dummy.
Yeah, she's in Dummy.
Oh, she was good in that, too.
She's great.
There's a moment where she kind of breaks down here. That would not work tonally in the beginning of the movie. I mean, the gravity of what people are saying, everybody's kind of having a laugh, especially the people who work at the TV station. The guy we saw from Jurassic Park, who I won't mention, was on that sitcom, but I can't remember the name of the fucking actor. And
Matt
now
Dillon.
I feel like no, that was somebody else.
Oh.
He's good in the movie, and I'm a prick for not knowing who he is. But, he's joking about what they called her behind her back, what they said about her. The kids all have fond memories of her. And then everything people say, once they start getting to the murder part, once they really have to start answering questions about the murder plot, that's when stuff, that's definitely a darker part of the movie. But yeah, I think you're onto something. That's the origins of her motivations. That Sweet Home Alabama scene, maybe it just sticks out in my head. That's where I kind of think, all right, the movie is almost split here. It's a little more gradual than to just say part. It's not, autofocus, which just somehow becomes dark part of the way through, and you go, what the hell? I didn't sign up for this.
Through the power of Willem Dafoe.
Oh God, autofocus was awesome. It's not autofocus. It's, they have that conversation in the car. And I kind of wonder, I mean, for me, I look at that and I say, where did that idea come from? When she finally says, you should kill him, that doesn't feel like, oh, she's finally put it into words. I get this feeling, maybe it's because I don't often engage in these types of conversations, but I think that came out of left field. Why are we killing him now?
Right.
Do you get that same feeling?
The only reason that I don't get that vibe is because the setup is so clear that he's going to be killed.
Right.
So by the time
you're just looking for that.
By the time they start discussing it, I'm like, okay, now we're talking about what this has clearly been about since the beginning.
Yeah. Why they're interviewing all of these people. Something happened. The movie is called To Die For. When do we get to the dying part? So this is something I definitely want to explore more. You seem to think that, all right, here was this moment. She realizes she means nothing to this guy. Their relationship is breaking down. To me, I always felt like, you know, certainly a big part of the movie is about her drive to succeed. And so I feel like maybe based on the evidence we get later, that she had him killed just because she knew it would garner her so much fame. This was
possible too. She has this TV obsession that we keep seeing on Double Feature, and I hate. I honestly really despise
Which
people.
obsession is that?
Essentially what it comes down to is the real world is television.
Oh,
if you're not on television, you are not a part of the real world.
Sure.
It's in Oliver Stone's Natural Born Killers.
I feel like that's going to come up again on the show.
And we see it again in the other film on the show, Serial Mom. But it's kind of a pain that's this weird obsession that drives her to do a lot, is to try to further her own, I guess, professional career as
You're saying when you see that in people, it drives you nuts that thing exists, that people would ever fucking believe that.
Right.
The only people who matter are TV people, and that we should all idolize them.
Sure.
Well, and that comes from a generation that's a lot more TV focused than us. I mean, the previous generation, you know, we grew up with television, but we didn't maybe have the same, you know, gather around the TV kind of moments that, you know, here's the first time this is happening on TV and this is happening. And there's politicians on TV and there's late night talk on TV and we're landing on the moon on TV. We weren't quite that same generation that idolized people. Whereas Nicole Kidman's character, her generation, you know, the Serial Mom generation, I mean, I guess the Serial Mom, and we'll look at that. That's a more modern court drama kind of idolizing. But the one we see with Nicole Kidman, she talks about these news anchors that, especially today, are, you know, no longer even anchors. But that Edward Murrow, that Good Night and Good Luck kind of generation that sat glued to the television and all felt like they knew these people, all felt like they loved these people. And so I think that's where that obsession kind of comes from. That's probably true of Natural Born Killers as well. So I guess it's both of those. Yeah. I guess she felt nothing for her husband. And then, I don't know, do you feel like maybe part of it was looking at the fame, or was that just a happy outcome of that?
I can definitely see that was probably factored in. It seemed calculated enough that she knew how she was going to handle everything.
From all of the interview stuff we get on the infinite white space, which turns out to just be a window in her living room. From all that stuff we get, it seems like the movie's telling us she's obsessed. She's driven. It also tells us she's not very bright, but she has one clear focus. And then as we start to see the pieces fill in that story, we see everyone say, yeah, you know what? She was insanely focused. She had one thing on her mind at all times. And so I don't know if you could definitely say, all right, she murdered him because she could have murdered anyone in the town in order to get fame. I mean, that wasn't, you know, it wasn't, I'm going to become a celebrity by murdering someone. That's how I'm going to get my status. But she also felt nothing for her husband. And the second he became even the slightest obstacle, that was it for him. That was the end of it.
He was expendable.
And so that's a little bit of a weird moment too. You mentioned at the end, things get odd. Yeah. So where about is the odd portion of the film?
Well, this is another one of those hour and 40-something minute films where I could have picked the ending 15 minutes before it ended.
Right.
Where I would have ended the film.
Oh, you mean your own, build your own ending?
Right, exactly.
Kind of like Back on Equilibrium.
Sure.
And it always seems to be at about an hour and 30 minutes where you go, that's an ending to the film.
Yeah.
And so the hour and 30 minute portion of the movie ends. And then there's just something a little extra.
Right, you get the point where they say, and we never saw our daughter again, but then the film cuts to the part where...
Could have been the ending, never saw our daughter again.
Exactly,
right?
but then the film gets to the part where the guy who directed The Fly puts her under the ice.
Don't pretend you don't know the name of that guy. That's the part where Mr. David Cronenberg is Italian.
Right. Yeah, he's part of the Italian mob, which has been alluded to the entire time.
Yeah, hold on a second. David Cronenberg is, first of all, David Cronenberg's Italian. When did that happen?
Cronenberg.
It probably happened around Eastern Promises.
Yeah.
But that actually came
a little
after
bit slightly more Western.
And also is not Italy. I tried.
But he puts her under the ice.
Yeah, he plays Man at the Lake, who is apparently a very important role in what happens in this story.
He's a serious hitman.
And he's hired by the family to have her killed.
Right. He's hired by like Matt Dillon's parents. Matt Dillon plays the husband.
All right, so I buy the ending. I like the ending for one reason and one reason only. Ileana's character then gets to ice skate on Nicole Kidman's corpse. It just makes for the best ending if you're going to look at this as a dark comedy, which is how I'd like to remember the movie.
Well, if you're going to end To Die For as a dark comedy, I'd hate to see what stretch you're going to make for Serial Mom.
It might just fall under dark comedy as well.
Really?
Look at that. It might also fall in
horror slasher film.
The same time. I wouldn't say horror slasher film, but definitely slasher film.
I could definitely see that.
The movie really likes its horror slasher film. Oh my God, all of the name dropping that happens over here. The Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer and Pee Wee Herman, both in the first, minute of the film. And then there's Blood Feast,
right?
So this is a John Waters movie, Serial Mom. John Waters was actually in the follow-up to Blood Feast several years later called Blood Feast 2.
Oh, that's a good title.
Somewhat 30 years after Blood Feast was made or whatever. And then there's the Citizen Kane of whatever movies that Blood Feast is called.
Yeah.
And Russ Meyer, too.
Yeah.
There's the Russ Meyer video.
Mondo topless.
And I love, here's the thing, right? In the world of John Waters. Now, for normal viewers, maybe people who in our listening audience in Podmanity who are not familiar with Russ Meyer, that kid was just watching porno. That's all that was porno with.
You see close-ups of big tits. There's two options, and most people aren't familiar with the second.
Yeah, so porno or Russ Meyer.
Yeah,
and they're a little bit too large, where they maybe just kind of cross over, push their way over, if you will, into exploitation territory.
The hangover.
And that is the giveaway to the Russ Meyer. And I love that. I love that we could have just had porn on the TV. Instead, we're going to put Russ Meyer on the TV. Just because that's the kind of kid this is. That's what Russ Meyer is awesome for. And in the John Waters world, there is no pornography. There's just Russ Meyer movies. I love it. And then after that, there's the reference to Freddy and Jason. Right. Which is oddly, in itself, a Natural Born Killers reference.
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, it's around the same time. It just seemed to be a happy mistake. Both of those franchises were going strong in the mid-90s, or
barely.
So they thought.
They were both ending.
Yeah, and then after that, we have Texas Chainsaw and, Annie and Ghost Dad. Yeah. I don't know, just movies appearing all over the place here. So where the film Polyester that we covered was a John Waters film that was a breed of housewife exploitation. This is sort of the same thing.
Sure, it's kind of the next level.
It's a mom has gone insane with the motherly things she expects out of society.
Exactly.
That sounds like a fine qualifier of housewife exploitation to me.
Yeah, I would say so.
And so we start this film saying, this film is a true story. The screenplay is based on court testimony, sworn declarations, and hundreds of interviews conducted by the filmmakers. It actually goes on even beyond that for 2 more screens to tell you about how they've changed the names of the innocents. And, that's where they
preserve a greater truth, I believe the phrase
greater
is.
truth. Like, we're going to get into some Freemason shit happening here. It's going to be the Illuminati appearing in this film. And so that's when it veers from a movie based on actual events into courtroom drama. It's almost more the Till Death Do Us Part breed of... I don't know if you ever saw that. We talked about it way back. It was a TV show on Court TV that John Waters was the groom reaper on. It was about marriages that ended in somebody killing the other person. And it's that same sort of thing, that fiction that would air on Court TV, those kind of dramas, true crime dramas. That start as a true story, but also the names are preserved to protect the end. There's some legal mumbo-jumbo kind of thrown in there for suspense.
Right.
Here's what I love about this. Much like we've talked about with Spun, House of the Devil even, and I think there was maybe something on that Lord of War show, even though I can't really remember. This is just a completely fabricated,
Right.
based on a true story.
Uh-huh.
There is nothing true about this story at all. Not even a little bit true. It just says based on a true story, and it says that because that's bullshit anyways.
Yeah.
And you can just make stuff up. And so John Waters made this joke that it seems like you or I would make in a film. That he's just seen so many movies. He knows people just say based on a true story, and everybody knows that's, not factual, but they put it in there anyways as if that's really going to get more people to come to the movie. And so he just threw it in his movie. He thought it was funny, based on a true story. There you go. Names have been changed to protect no one.
It's easily in his top 3 most heinous film premises.
What do you mean?
Of all the films to call based on a true story, aside from maybe A Dirty Shame, Serial Mom is the least
It's
likely
the most
to
far-fetched,
really
yeah.
happen.
Yeah, especially when they get to the point outside the courtroom. They're selling this memorabilia and some of the stuff that's happening. I mean, I guess that's not even the most unrealistic part because that's just supposed to be a theatrical version of the media circus outside the courtroom. But some of the stuff leading up to it, the way the killings take place, the fact that the guy from Scream is playing his role from Scream in this movie as well. I mean, a lot of things that are far-fetched in real life.
Right.
So way back on the Pecker episode, the last John Waters film we talked about, harmless fun.
Right.
The convenience store, or grocery store, or
With
whatever.
the pictures
Taking the pictures.
that everybody did on Facebook.
Here we have what starts with more harmless fun. And this is where you see how harmless fun can turn into, I don't know, stabbing people to death with scissors. Where we have these obscene phone calls. I love these. I love Kathleen Turner and the obscene voice that isn't Jessica Rabbit. We should point that out, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I was talking about in the people skip to that movie.
When I was
maybe
talking
they
about
don't
fucking
know.
cartoons.
Right. When
Yeah.
you were talking about fucking cartoons, I was thinking Jessica Rabbit.
Uh-huh.
And that's Kathleen Turner's voice.
Yeah, it's her voice.
Really bizarre. So I wish I knew more about Kathleen Turner because I feel like this would be even more enjoyable if I did. But I have to be honest in saying that I haven't seen her in basically anything.
I haven't seen her in anything.
Outside of Who Framed Roger Rabbit,
Right.
which was amazing and
Sure.
which we covered on the show, and which you should probably watch again at this point.
If you
haven't
not
seen it
watched
since then, yeah.
exactly. Watch it again.
Do it again
You
right
owe it
now.
to yourself.
Pause this.
You were talking about Kathleen Turner and her charm despite being a newbie to your film world.
So she's making the obscene phone calls and she's swearing and fairly tame vulgarities.
Sure.
But it doesn't even matter what the words are.
She's saying
to
pussy willow.
Right. Doesn't matter what the words are to the audience. It matters what they are to her victim.
The victim is Mink Stoll.
Right.
Another
one of these.
A recent widow. I was going to say divorcee, but you don't get a choice.
Yeah, she's alone in her house. This poor woman. This
Sure.
poor John Waters actress that shows up all the time.
It's
in this
when a
stuff.
stranger calls.
Yeah, and the calls to her are just the thing that makes it even more fun, right? Is not that you're saying these things that offend the person. I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good fun. But what's even better is when she then calls back as the phone company
Right.
and makes her recite them. Because the whole idea is this great John Waters tradition. You look at a taboo and then you force the taboo on the very people who are uncomfortable with it.
Right.
And that's just what's celebrated so much in John Waters films. That's one of the things I love the most about these movies. It's just this kind of false victory. It makes me feel like things are better in the world. I think that's to really pin down why I always talk about that, why I feel like stuff is right when John Waters is in control.
Right.
It's just this harmless but completely empowering feeling that, oh yeah, people who aren't okay with these social issues, fuck you, you're going to have that shoved in your face. I just feel the sense of victory that's not there
Right.
at all. And so she's then making this woman overcome the very taboos, probably just making them more traumatic for her, in effect, by reciting them on the phone.
And then she
Beautiful.
just continues to harass her.
Yeah, right. Right, the continued harassment. But this isn't as harmless as photos in the convenience store. This is, this becomes murder. This becomes serial murder. And that is as much her fetish as the fetishes in A Dirty Shame.
Absolutely.
I mean, she feeds off that, right?
Yeah, it's kind of the whole film is almost about obsession, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
She gets off on killing people.
Right.
That's kind of her thing. And
righting her own little wrongs in the
Sure.
world. The little things that bother her.
Right. And at first she kind of writes it off as doing it for other people, going back to the Fabergé egg when Herschel Gordon Lewis is the guy's heart with the fire poker.
Yeah, yeah.
injustice of getting this Fabergé egg, but the end result is she just wants to kill people who are wearing white shoes after Labor Day.
That's the glory hole sequence.
Right.
That there's so much John Waters about that whole part. I mean, so you have the glory hole, another weird taboo teabagging kind of thing that John Waters is telling people about in his movie.
It's almost a mythical idea.
Right.
The mythical idea of the glory hole.
And so he's going to show it to the audience. He's going to say, hey, look at this weird sexual thing that I've been thinking about and obsessing over and writing and putting in my movie now. Mm-hmm. And so, you have the glory hole in the bathroom, and that's the same scene where you have, that sequence with the fire poker,
right,
where she has the fire poker, she stabs the guy, and then she pulls the meat off it.
Yeah.
And it's so, the meat, I mean, it looks like it's out of, a Herschel Gordon Lewis
Sure,
movie.
it looks like Blood Feast.
It's that Blood Feast type of bizarre gore where it just looks like raw steak in some kind of brown, gooey, I don't know how he does it, but Herschel Gordon Lewis has the most, you just know it when you see it.
Yep.
You know that kind of gore. And I think the movie probably knows it's doing that because of so many references to Blood Feast specifically and to other Herschel Gordon Lewis stuff. But there's another weird thing. Do you remember the sample? How could you forget the sample that comes out of the guy's voice?
The StarCraft Command Center sample.
Is that where it's from too?
Yeah.
So I know I mentioned it on our show before, but it's the fucking Real Monsters thing.
Yeah.
If you just YouTube that, it was some bullshit cartoon in the 90s.
Yeah, it was a stop motion thingy.
Was it stop motion?
Or claymation.
I thought it was animated.
Maybe it was animated, you're right.
Neither of us have any idea what we're talking about, but I do remember that soundbite, from the title sequence or commercials that would play or something. And it's very, very distinct. It's a very distinct scream. And this has to be, we pick up on the sound bank stuff so often, but this has to be one of the most obnoxious, obvious uses. It's just a man who screams. Mm-hmm. Rather than being buried in the background, say a village is on fire and people are fleeing in terror, or something horrifying is happening in a mass crowd of people and it's buried under all the other samples. Instead, it's just this man who walks in and he screams, and rather than using his scream, for whatever reason, they use the sampled scream, and it's so funny coming out of him. I don't know if that's because of where I know it from.
It's just obvious and very deliberate. You can
it's deliberate. That's what
you can
it is.
see John Waters and friends giggling every time that came up in the original edits.
Yeah, they went through the sound bank and they went, this one's the funniest.
It's almost as if he heard the fucking sound clip of that scream and said to himself, when would you ever need somebody to sound like that?
Right. Maybe in a previous movie, and then he put the scene in for that.
Right.
But yeah, to get back to that, that's her fetish. That's what makes her feel good. You see her light up as a person, after she goes on these killings. I think they even make mention of it after the first one. After she comes home and talks about the principal, the guy at school or whatever.
Right.
All the way up into the Annie killing. The
lamb shank bludgeoning.
Yeah, it's this fucking giant stick of lamb. They talk about the bad influence of family films. And I love that too. That rather than just defend, as most people do, defend the bloody stuff. If you're a fan of the Herschel Gordon Lewis, the Russ Meyer stuff, you defend it, you say it doesn't harm other people. Rather than do that, John Waters is just going to go on the offense. He's going to say those fucking family
Stop
films.
watching Ghost Dad.
Yeah, Ghost Dad is what's fucking up America. And so then there's this choice, kitchen knife or chunk of lamb leg. And for some reason, it's just so much more brutal with the lamb leg.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Well, and she's hitting her to the beat of The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow.
Right.
Which is, I love Annie. I've been trying to get you to do Annie on the show for a long time.
We honestly should.
But there's something kind of, it's back to the John Waters, like, this isn't dark. It's not creepy or evil.
Right.
It's just, you beat someone with a lamb shank to the tune of Tomorrow by Rodgers and Hammerstein. I don't think it's Rodgers and Hammerstein, actually, but you get my point.
Yeah, I know that exact moment. How could you forget that? I just love the selection, the choice, where she has the knife, she's ready to make a stab. You know what? That's not right for the scene. We're going to go with a giant stick of meat. And so he wants to get out his message about family films ruining America. But then there's also some stuff about capital punishment, which I find pretty funny.
Right.
Not so much capital punishment on a whole, but that it's right and Christian.
Yeah.
You know, there's that great scene where they go in the church after they're followed by a motorcade of police. And they enter the church, and the guy is talking about, of course it's Christian. Jesus was on the cross. Wouldn't that have been a good time to speak up
Right.
if ever there was one? And, you know, then he talks about just do it. I mean, it's practically the Nike slogan.
Yeah.
Come on, people, capital punishment. It's just the right thing. We should just get on that right now. And that's the only point of that whole scene. Right after that, they run out.
Right.
They come in just long enough to hear that moment from the preacher, and then they leave.
Mm-hmm.
To get into then what becomes more of, I guess, a real true crime. We've never in the other John Waters stuff we've done, talked about him employing felons for his movies. How do we skip over that?
Well, this is probably the best one to talk about.
Well, I don't know. You know, we had a little bit more. Oh, I guess we see the same actor in Pecker.
Yeah.
But yeah, we should cover that here. That's Patricia Hearst.
Yeah.
So Patty Hearst is in, I guess, every movie from Crybaby on, right?
Pretty much.
It's, I think it's every single one of them. And she's someone I only really know about her from when Bill Clinton pardoned her. I think it was the last thing he did as president.
Uh-huh.
But she was picked up by this Liberation Front, right? She's the daughter of...
she's a granddaughter
of
William Randolph Hearst.
So she was kidnapped by some kind of Liberation Front. And I don't know, this is kind of a new fascination of mine. I've been looking into this a lot more before we did this show. She was kidnapped by this group. And I don't know the exact details, so I'm not even really sure about how I feel about Patricia Hearst as a person. It's amazing that she's in these movies. That I feel incredible about.
Right, but that's all John Waters.
But yeah, I don't know if I like her or not. She, I guess she kind of befriended the group.
Sure.
If that's to be believed. Again, don't really know the details. But, you know, if we'll kind of believe the narrative that most people seem to buy into, she befriended this group. She was sympathetic towards the cause of her kidnappers. And so she robbed a bank with them. And I guess she pleaded differently. And, you know, her sentence wasn't very long. But there are these great photos. If you just Google Patty Hearst or Patricia Hearst or whatever, you might need to throw her middle name in there. Just look her up. You'll see the stuff in Google Images. There are these great shots of, it's like black and white footage from a bank robbery. And then a shot of a John Waters movie. And then her screaming at some people with a, carbine rifle. And then another John Waters film. And it's just an even mix of, footage from a bank robbery or footage from the crime spree stuff or whatever, the news articles, I guess, that were coming out at the time, and then interspersed with all of the acting career. So Jimmy Carter gave her a shorter sentence, or I don't remember exactly what happened there. And then Bill Clinton was the one who officially just nullified the record, or whatever that means to be.
Yeah, pardoned after your release from prison.
Yeah, I guess that's what happened. And because I think he pardoned her even after she was in the movies, right? Because that would have had to make sense. Because Crybaby, right? Yeah. So yeah, I'm just going to continue to plead
politics elude us
one.
here on this Serial Mom show.
Thank you. No one should be expecting this of me. But now she shows up in this movie. She was in Pecker as what was her role in Pecker?
I don't remember. She was just one of the New Yorkers
the
who grabbed her
socialites?
tits.
Sure.
She was the tit-grabbing New Yorker.
Yeah, I remember that, where the guy comes up and he says, "I love your tits," or whatever.
Sure.
And in this movie, she is juror number 8. So now John Waters is on such friendly terms with former convict, former felon, and not the only felon he's employed.
Right.
Not the only one in his films. But he's on such good terms with her, he can force her into a courtroom, which must be kind of awkward, right? To be a juror. Although he probably thinks there's something fitting and comical about that, which there clearly is. And then, she gets killed. So this is another big John Waters staple. We have a trial in this movie. A nonsensical happens
circus
at the end of the movie, media circus trial. John Waters has a huge fascination with these things. I don't know why. I'm not sure what the draw is, but I can kind of see it. When he talks about, you have to read John Waters interviews. They're amazing. Just see him interviewed, see him in documentaries. He's in a ton of them. But to watch him talk about court trials and his fascination with that, I suddenly feel like I love court trials, even though I don't give a shit at all. I don't care about this. I've been spending a week reading about Patty Hearst. I don't, of what interest is that to me? But I hear John Waters talk about it, And then suddenly I am just as enthusiastic about it. It's amazing. So he puts a trial in this movie here. And that's really where Patricia Hearst came from for him. It was his interest in all of this court, crime drama, true crime, all of that stuff. You know, and by having that fascination, he brought that actor in his movies even before he even had a courtroom scene for her. But what this effectively does for the movie, besides examining the courtroom and being more farcical and making more humor
and bringing in
out of it,
Suzanne Summers.
and bringing Suzanne, well, and apparently Kathy Bates as well.
Kathy Bates.
I did not spot the Bates.
That's a harder game.
She has an uncredited role. I guess it's kind of rumored. I don't know the exact details. I can't find Kathy Bates at the end, but apparently she's there. So says the internet. And as we know about, what's that chick's name from The Devil's Rejects who we couldn't find? Yeah, that girl. The internet, always correct.
Okay, so I actually watch The Devil's Rejects 4 or 5 times a week.
Whoa, so is there progress here?
Yeah, she's the nurse that gets stabbed on the road.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, you found her. Good. Thanks for following up on that. I appreciate that. So the other effect this has, the big effect for me, the one I love, is that you get a chance to review earlier in the film. It's like your conclusion paragraph of your fucking 3-point essay.
Right.
You get to say, look back at what happened. Well, we had some fun. We had some laughs. Wasn't this a good time?
Certainly some people died, but all in the honor of a greater truth.
Yeah, a greater truth. And so it's like you get to go back and convince your audience that this actually was a great movie. You might have already forgot some of the good moments. Let me replay them for you before they actually leave. It's such a William Castle-esque. I mean, it just makes so much sense for John Waters. It's perfect.
All right, so that's what? That's our second John Waters show this year?
Yeah.
That's probably enough for 1 year, right?
Well, we're kind of running out of time.
I guess it'll have to be enough then.
Oh my God, we're going to be in year 4 of this show.
If you want to watch more John Waters
this
movies, then you would have to be a winner of our donation contest.
Yeah, something like that.
You're welcome to email us and tell us to watch more John Waters movies at doublefeatureshow@gmail.com. We won't listen. Also,
I'm pretty sure we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, that's true. You're better off just
by coincidence, we will totally listen just
send
this one
us
time.
all of your suggestions so you can pat yourself on the back and tell all your friend when we finally do the film you recommended to us. Hey, good job.
Congrats.
Otherwise, you can check out the other stuff we did at doublefeatureshow.com.
Such a back catalog now. So many awful,
154 shows,
awful
actually,
shows
is where we are.
We should take those down.
But we're gonna keep doing shows. We're gonna do another show next week.
Oh my God. I told people this has been a long time coming. Maybe they didn't believe us.
Or maybe they skipped right from the beginning. Hey, welcome to the show.
You should go back because that show turned out pretty fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
So go listen to that. Okay, so what is it? What are we doing?
We're going to do Harry Brown.
Uh-huh.
And then we're going to do Children of Men. Now, I know what you're thinking.
Whoa. A Michael Caine double feature for Children of Men. That's inappropriate.
Here's the deal.
All right, what is it?
We watch... Okay, so this is what? This next show will be show 155, which means
like
we've watched, at minimum, 310 films, not including Killapaloozas.
Oh, so many movies.
Sometimes, when you pick 2 films, the same actor is in them.
Yeah.
You have to deal with that and just get around. We're not doing a Michael Caine double feature. Turns out actors do multiple films.
We didn't even realize it. When we paired it up, we went, finally, great. And then there was about half a second, and you went, fuck, Michael Caine in both of the movies. And we didn't want that to seem like that's the focus because we've been trying to do Children of Men forever. Harry Brown is also pretty fucking good.
Yep.
And I think it's different enough that there won't be any weighing the 2 movies versus each other or anything weird like that. Yeah. It just fits so well for all sorts of other reasons that we have to ignore the fact that it looks like it's highlighting the career of Michael Caine.
We love Michael Caine. We'll do a Michael Caine-centric episode when we do Alfie and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Oh, God.
But right now, you're just going to have to watch more fucking film.
Goodbye. Man, we got a huge one. Don't spoil it. Not yet. You have to wait for it. We've been trying to do this movie on the show for a long time. We found something else that we said, fuck it, we're going to pair it with this movie.
Right.
I would almost just skip there now and find out. But don't do that. Listen to the...
don't spoil it for yourself.
Let's do To Die For first.
Okay.
This one is based on the so-called true story. I'm going to keep saying so-called true story because I think that's perfect. Of Pamela Smart. And this is actually something of a true story. There was a book called To Die For that was written, and then this is the movie kind of based on that. And I think this is interesting as a Gus Van Sant movie Because I don't know. Does it feel like Gus Van Sant? Is it halfway there?
Yeah,
what is it?
I think that as a Gus Van Sant film, I haven't seen
Elephant, right? That was what we did on the show.
Right, we did Elephant.
There's your previously on double feature thing to kind of compare that to.
I haven't seen nearly as many as you, but from what I know is that Gus Van Sant has his films, and then he has the films that Matt Damon are in.
Right. Although I wouldn't say that's necessarily true, because some of his artsy stuff has Matt Damon.
That's true. But I would definitely say that as far as mainstream goes, this falls just about middle of the road.
Yeah,
there's enough Gus Van Sant artsy bullshit, which take or leave, and then there's enough mainstreamy bullshit,
which also take or leave.
Mm-hmm.
So, the closest you probably get to this sort of mixture is the film Milk, which is capitalizing on a lot of the artsy Gus Van Sant stuff, but somehow had enough of...
Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
My name is Eric. I'm here with Michael on Double Feature.
Hi.
And I'm sick today, so I want to watch another fucking John Waters movie.
Sounds like a plan.
How does this keep happening?
I have no idea.
So today we're doing the May and Teeth show, but with older women, right? That's kind of
That's exactly what it is, yeah.
It's, what are the movies?
Today we're going to do To Die For and Serial Mom.
This is one of those double features that I don't know how much I have to say about it, but it's just too fucking perfect of a pairing. I mean, these are mid-90s dark comedy films about women committing so-called true crimes. It's just so good. We had to do it. So hopefully people watched it at home on their own, and then they got probably more enjoyment than they're going to get out of this episode. We'll do To Die For first, because the whole doing John Waters first thing, that doesn't feel good.
No,
we'll
it's
do that
always
second.
weird.
We'll do To Die For first. That's the Gus Van Sant film. Obviously, after that, we'll do Serial Mom, which is the John Waters film. And we got chapters.
Sure, chapters.
So if you happen to not catch one of those movies, what would you do?
You could go ahead and skip right over in your chapters menu.
Perfect.
To the next film or the end of the show where we tell you that we're doing...
based on the novel, which is based on the court proceedings, which are, an explanation of these killings. I mean, this is true fucking crime that we're talking about. And so I see the Gus Van Sant there. I definitely see it there. But then you have some other weird elements kind of thrown in the mix.
Right.
The most awesome of which is the ass-kicking Danny Elfman score.
Yeah.
Holy shit, where did this thing come from? So put me kind of in the era of, what are we doing? We're dealing with like 95. So whereabouts is that?
This is just about after the Elfman-Burton divorce.
Okay, so we're right in that kind of territory.
Yeah. So Danny Elfman has kind of been scoring Tim Burton films, and I mean, he's garnered enough mainstream success separate from Tim Burton that he's been doing other films.
Right.
When we did Ed Wood, we kind of talked about how Danny Elfman was notably absent from the score.
Right.
And this is what he was doing. Imagine Ed Wood with this soundtrack, and now you know why.
Yeah,
Ed Wood did not have Danny Elfman's score.
And so we're dealing with maybe Edward Scissorhands era, but we have this grinding guitar, these metal pieces, and this musical saw, which I really don't. Sort of Mars Attacks kind of musical saw that's in there. Especially the opening credits. Yeah. Just so good.
Well, it's almost reminiscent of Funny Games.
Yeah, right.
Where it's quiet and quaint and we're in fucking Connecticut and then, oh my God, rock and roll. Everything's so fucking loud for no reason.
Punk fucking rock, man. Resistance, fuck the man, your own path, anarchy,
denim jackets.
Appeal. I shouldn't say somehow. It had enough appeal because they pumped budget into it.
And it was, 2.5 hours long?
And lots of people were interested in the story. And it's a good movie. Not to knock any of that stuff, but just to look at where these fall. Because Gus Van Sant's always been one of the most distinct examples of, I have my artsy films, I have my mainstream films. Elephant was what you would consider...
art film.
Of course. And so Finding Forrester would be...
painfully mainstream.
What was the other one that was super mainstream too?
Good Will Hunting?
Good Will Hunting. It's odd when you go back and when you watch all of a director's movies, from a director you've never seen any of their stuff, and then to try and figure out which were the mainstream ones, you can identify them. They're really easy with Gus Van Sant. However, they're not the ones that I remember.
Right.
And so the ones that might be your favorite as you perform this experiment at home, not always the ones that were a huge, phenomenal success.
Right.
So it's curious to look at what made those big successes. And a lot of times that's budget and content and, you know, stuff like Milk.
Cast and
The studio decided it would be a huge breakout success. It had more advertising, it won some awards, you know, whatever the case may be. We're certainly better at looking at cult films and figuring out how those accidentally became successes.
Right.
We should pick a mainstream film sometime and just really look into what the fuck, how did, say, a Gus Van Sant mainstream film become a Gus Van Sant mainstream film? But we have some weird middle ground with To Die For. What do you feel like are the mainstream elements? What are the artsy elements here?
Well, I think that a lot of the mainstream element comes from casting. Then again, this is early Joaquin Phoenix and early Casey Affleck, so we can't chalk them up to big names in casting just yet. But we do have Nicole Kidman.
Sure.
And we do have Matt Dillon, who at the time was actually popular. If you don't know who Matt Dillon is, he is the husband in the film To Die For.
Oh, great.
Yeah, he was an actor back in like 1994.
I've already forgotten who that is. Again, which one?
The husband, Matt Dillon.
In the film we watched.
To Die For is the name of the film.
What was the actor's name?
I don't remember.
Fuck.
So the casting is definitely a huge factor on what makes this a mainstreamy Gus Van Sant film.
Right.
Also the fact that there's a really cohesive, straightforward narrative. But the fact that that narrative gets interrupted by kind of testimonials is really... That's the artsy element, and the fact that you don't ever really get the full story until the story is finished is another really artsy element to the film.
Yeah, it's really strange, the documentary aspects of the film. And I mean, you know, for me, I can look back at a lot of the stuff Gus Van Sant has done and kind of pick out, I mean, we mentioned before on the show, the Death trilogy, you know, stuff like Elephant, which we did, but also Last Days and Jerry. And I can see Gus Van Sant's interest, and this would really be, you know, a budding interest at the time because he hadn't done any of that stuff yet. So this was his first real kind of, I guess there's crime elements to some of the stuff he does, but I feel like this is basically